Hey everyone, it's me, and today I bring you another edition of Is This the Where? We ask the important questions like, is this the best one-liner in movie history? And of course, is this the scariest werewolf in cinema history? Because if there's one thing that scares me more than anything else, it's werewolves. I mean, nothing beats having your insides torn apart by sharp as hell teeth and claws, and then being told that you gone, nah, be just fine because you now a werewolf. Thanks, Hollywood. There's no way that I could do this list without mentioning vampires. As a creature, the vampire is the most popular monster in cinema, and there's been so many great portrayals of the creature over the years. But when it comes to horror cinema, I think werewolves are a much more terrifying prospect. The main reason for this is that in folklore, vampires were always human. They never had any other choice, whereas werewolves were often cursed against their will, which is a fate worse than death itself. Werewolves can also transform at will, which makes them much more dangerous than their vampire counterparts. A vampire has to wait until night, and they have to have blood. But a werewolf doesn't need anything. They just transform whenever they want to, and rip through anyone who gets in their way. That's what I call a commitment to terror. Now, before I get started, I do have two honorable mentions. The first is Decalion from Teen Wolf. He was only in the movie for about 5 minutes. But he was still pretty cool, even though he didn't really seem all that dangerous. I mean, he did get taken out by a silver bullet quite easily, so I'm not sure how high he would rank on my list. Still, he was pretty scary, and he was played by the legendary Manu Bennett, so that counts for something. My other honorable mention goes to a terrifying werewolf that shows up in the train sequence in Train to Busan. It's probably the most frightening creature that I've ever seen in that film. And it honestly looks like if an Uruk-hai from Lord of the Rings had a baby with an orc. Now, let's take a look at the list. No. 5. The Werewolf, Curse of the Full Moon. This is a very obscure film. I barely even remember anything about it. And that's the reason why I included this werewolf on my list. We see him running through the woods, doing some very light stalking, and then transforming into this grotesque beast. That's literally it. But we don't know anything about the curse that he's under. We don't know how he became this way, and we don't know how he can break the curse. All we know is that he becomes this horrible-looking beast once the full moon arrives, and I think that alone makes him pretty terrifying. His design is definitely inspired by Lon Chaney's Wolfman, and I think that whoever was behind the mask did a fantastic job. The way that he moves and stalks his prey is also incredibly convincing. And again, he's only in the film for about 10 minutes. But he manages to become one of the scariest monsters in the entire film. No. 4. The Werewolf, an American werewolf in London. This werewolf was designed by Rob Bottin, and even though he doesn't appear for very long in the film, he's still very memorable and very terrifying. Unlike a lot of werewolves in cinema, he actually doesn't look too bad at first, but once he starts to fully transform, he becomes this grotesque mass of flesh and fur. So what makes him so scary? Well, it's the fact that David, who he possesses, is able to retain some of his humanity while he's transformed. There's a scene where he looks at his own reflection and recognizes himself. And that's what makes this particular werewolf so frightening. It's the fact that he doesn't have control. If someone that looked like that was running around your neighborhood, you'd hope that they'd be locked up forever. But the fact that he recognizes himself in the mirror means that this is a person trapped inside a monster-esque body. And that's terrifying. Number 3. Dracula's werewolf form. Bram Stoker's Dracula. I think this is one of the coolest and most terrifying portrayals of Dracula in cinema. And it's mostly due to the fact that he has a werewolf form. This takes place in the film's climax, and we don't really get much explanation as to why he can transform into this beast. But given that he is already a vampire, I guess it's not too surprising. And it's also pretty fitting. Wolves are known for hunting in packs, and Dracula has been gathering an army of vampires throughout the whole film, so I guess it only makes sense that he would have a wolfish appearance to match his army. What makes this werewolf form so terrifying, though, is that it's played by Gary Oldman, and he brings the same manic energy that he displays as Dracula into the creature. When he howls, it's as if Dracula is letting out all of his pent-up rage, and that sound alone is enough to terrify anyone. No. 2. The Werewolf. The Wolfman. This is one of the most well-known werewolves in cinema history, and for good reason. Lon Chaney's portrayal of Lawrence Talbot is one of the greatest performances ever, and his transformation into a werewolf is one of the best depictions of the transformation process ever committed to film. And yes, I am aware that some people believe that werewolves can't turn into wolves, that they just kind of look like wolves and walk on all fours. But I think this particular version of the werewolf is an excellent middle ground. While he does change into a wolf-like creature, he still retains some human characteristics, and that makes him much more frightening than if he were to turn into an actual wolf. For example, he has eyes, and they're filled with pain and agony. It's clear that he doesn't want to be this beast, and that makes him all the more tragic. Alright, before we get to know 1, here are a few quick honorable mentions. There's the big bad wolf from The Three Little Pigs. Need I say more? Then there's the terrifying werewolves from Ginger Snaps. I didn't put them on my list, because I haven't seen the rest of the series yet, but I think they're very well done and very effective. And last but not least, there's the werewolf from Dog Soldiers. It's a very brutal film, and the werewolf is incredibly savage and frightening, but I thought it wouldn't be fair to put it on this list, since it is a British film and I'm trying to keep this as American focused as possible. Alright, on to number 1. And no. 1. The Werewolf, The Company of Wolves. This one may shock you. I mean, I'm sure that a lot of you haven't even heard of this film, but it was directed by Neil Jordan, who was also responsible for bringing us Interview with a Vampire, and it's definitely a must-watch for fans of fairy tales turned dark. It's loosely based on the story of Little Red Riding Hood, and it stars Sarah Jessica Parker as Rosaline, a young woman who's preparing for her upcoming marriage. Throughout the film, she has these recurring dreams about a terrifying werewolf who's targeting the women in her village. She eventually meets a mysterious stranger who tells her that he's being stalked by the same beast, and they decide to try and find the werewolf together. The thing about this film is that it uses the werewolf as a metaphor for sexual awakening, and this allows Jordan to create one of the most terrifying creatures in film history. Early on in the film, we see the werewolf in its human form, and it's portrayed by the great David Warner. So when he transforms, the effects are all practical, and they're some of the best I've ever seen. The way that he loses control of his body and contorts himself into a terrifying beast is absolutely mesmerizing. And when he lets out his first roar, it's so powerful that it'll shake you to your core. And I've said this about vampires before, but it's worth repeating. If a creature is able to strike fear into your heart just from its appearance and its sound, then it's done its job. There's no need for CGI, blood and guts, and jump scares. If a creature can instill primal fear, then that's all that really matters. And that's why this particular werewolf is the scariest in cinema history. Thanks for watching, everyone. Which werewolf do you think is the scariest? Let me know in the comments section below. And if you're new here, go ahead and subscribe. And if you enjoyed this video, then check out my video. Is this the best one-liner in movie history? I'll see you next time.